Hey, what's up, everybody? We're well into the month of October. Today's feature is a recently released feature to go upon the Shudder app. Before I talk about the movie today, today's feature right here at the Cinemacast podcast, be sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Arrow Entertainment. Or if you're on TikTok, make sure you leave a like. Like the video, share it out. And it's also uploaded on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ArrowENT. Welcome to today's episode of Cinemacast. Today's feature, as I stated, this one was released on the streaming service app Shudder. If you don't know what Shudder is a horror film-based streaming service for horror movies, old and new, and some original releases, as well as some podcasts on there too. So if you want to sign up for Shudder, it's about, I believe it's like $4.99 or $5.99 a month. I can't remember what it is. It's a cheap app. It's a lot cheaper than Hulu, Netflix, and all. It may not have a whole lot to offer, but it does have a good variety of horror movies to choose from. So if you guys want to check that out, go to shudder.com, sign up for the subscription, check it out. They got some really good movies on there. They do have some stinkers on there from time to time, but it's hit or miss if you are into horror, whether it's B horror, theatrical horror that they add on there, or old school horror, new school horror, whatever. And today's episode talks about a movie that was just released on there called VHS Beyond. Now, I did an episode a bit ago about anthology movies. Yeah, I was talking about anthology movies. And there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of good anthology movies out there. Some of them are, I guess you could say, classics for their time. They're really good. And you got some that are actually like, what the fuck? This was pretty bad. Or maybe this shouldn't have been made. I don't know. But other than that, movies like this, you know, the VHS series. So, VHS, I gotta say, there is a long line of VHS movies in the franchise. And I don't know how many there are. Let me look this up. Okay, so, starting back in 2012, and it seemed like every year they were making one, and then they skipped a few years. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 movies on the VHS series. 1 through 3 came out starting in 2012, and they were like a year apart from each other. They didn't give any in between. It's like the new Saw, but this is anthology horror. It's an American horror anthology franchise. So the first one came out in 2012, followed by the second one in 2013, and then VHS Viral, which was in 2014. And of course, the series disappeared for about 7 years. It disappeared, and then VHS 94 came out in 2021. Followed by VHS 99 and 22, VHS 85 and 23. These are era-based. You know, they're the different eras of the time. You're like, what happened in 1994, 99, 1985. And now we got the next entry, which comes out this year. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be another entry coming out next year. I'm pretty sure there's going to be another VHS movie that's going to come out next year. But this one here is VHS Beyond. Now, there are a few other movies. There's a couple that are spin-offs. There's one called Siren. I haven't heard of Siren, but that is an American horror film, I guess. It's based off... Okay. It's a full-length adaptation and continuation of the Amateur Night segment from VHS. Okay. I see where it's going now. I see where it's at. I see a little bit of it. Okay, so there's a segment in there that talks about a succubus. Okay. I definitely got to check that out. Okay. Then there's another full-length adaptation that came out in 2022 called Kids vs. Aliens. I did see this come out. I didn't think it was a horror movie. I thought it was like a fucking kiddie movie or something. But it's based off of the segment from VHS 2 called Slumber Party Alien Abduction. That one was a little bit terrifying in a sense. You know, like if you were terrified of aliens and shit, like, those kind of movies, they really do get you. Like, look at movies like Fire in the Sky. I never fully watched that movie, but I know its premise. I know it's based on somebody's recollection of possibly being abducted by aliens. and then telling his retelling of what the aliens did to him or something, or I don't know. You know, usually with those movies, they try to add different scenes to add the effect that makes it more terrifying, and also it may not have happened. It may have happened. Don't really know. But that's where this is kind of headed with this feature today. This is the 7th installment and the 9th overall in the VHS franchise. So there's 7 VHS movies and there's 2 spin-offs. Kind of like the Fast and the Furious franchise. You know, like Hobbs and Shaw is a spin-off, but it's considered part of the Fast and Furious films. It is pretty interesting. So this film features segments from Jordan Downey, I don't know who he is, Christian and Justin Long. Oh, Justin Long. I don't remember seeing Justin Long in this movie. Okay. All right. So let me tell you, there is a segment in this movie. I'm going to come out and say it right now. It's called Fur Babies. And it's a very disturbing tale. It really is. And it's about a woman who runs a dog daycare center and also is a taxidermist. So anytime her beloved animals die, you know how taxidermy is. You take a dead animal, you strip it of all of its guts, all of its insides, and you stuff it with whatever they use. I don't know what they use when it comes to taxidermy. You know, they stuff it and then they, you know, put it up, mount it somewhere, you know, that kind of thing. And it's very odd that I do say that. It's a very interesting take on it, too. But it's funny that Justin Long is in this movie, because there was a movie that was directed by Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith directed a lot of movies since the 90s. And if you don't know who Kevin Smith is, he was the titular character, Silent Bob, and some of those movies like Jay and Silent Bob, Clerks and stuff. Yes, he is a director as well. He directed a movie called Tusk that starred Justin Long in it. And in that movie is where he goes out, I think he does a podcast. You know, he was doing a podcast interview with this guy. And he ends up getting drugged and then caged up. And the guy ends up, he's a freaky guy, you know. He's kind of like a doctor, sort of, but he's like a madman. So he slowly turns Justin Long's character into a walrus. So you see, it's a body horror film. Like, some of it you do see, and there's a lot of it that's like, you know, for your imagination. But he turns him into a walrus. He mutilates his body and turns him into a walrus in there. So I found that funny, because it's kind of the irony of both these movies, that he's turned into a walrus in that movie, whereas in this one, in the segment, he's turned into a dog. So it kind of plays out in like a, wow, what a coincidental kind of thing, you know? But yeah, as you guessed it, VHS Beyond, it is a found footage sci-fi horror anthology film. Now, found footage seems to have a lot of hit or misses, but I take a liking sometimes to good found footage movies. Like, there has been quite a few out there in like the 80s and the 90s where they were experimenting with something, you know, experimenting with that type of filmography. But it didn't really go full mainstream until the Blair Witch Project came out 25 years ago. God damn. 25 years for the Blair Witch Project. Wow. So yeah, 25 years ago, Blair Witch blew everybody out of the water when it came to theaters. Found footage horror film. Everybody believed it. Everybody thought everything that happened on screen actually happened in real life. But then again, you would think there would be people complaining and say, oh, this is a snuff film. It's a snuff film. Like, how's it a snuff film? Like, they didn't kill each other. They didn't kill anybody. It's a film about three campers and hikers that disappear, and all that's found is their footage, you know? But yeah, found footage movies have been around for, 30 years. And Blair Witch was not the first found footage film. It brought it to more mainstream audience. It popularized the subgenre, but it wasn't the first. So yeah, found footage movies have been out for 30 plus years. And, there's still quite a bit of movies that come out, every so often, especially ones where they take to the internet about, what was it? There was a couple I seen where it was like these four friends, they take to Zoom calling each other, and then some weird stuff happens in the background, that kind of thing. Those kind of movies, they're interesting, and I think when it comes to found footage horror, there's a particular essence with it where it feels like you are in the movie, sort of. Kind of like when you play a video game, an RPG, where it puts you in a role of a character. You create your own character, you're in that role, and you get immersed into it, that kind of thing. And I think that's what found footage movies kind of do. They try to put you in the eye of the camera and make you think, I'm watching something that actually happened, kind of thing. And there's also a lot of found footage movies out there that act as documentaries, which they call mockumentaries. They're not they're in a documentary style, but they're kind of not really parodied, but they're mocked upon. So a movie like this, it does have a documentary segment that splits up into several different scenes, and it kind of feels like a documentary in a sense, but it's mocking that style. So this film, it is presented with 5 segments built around a frame narrative in the form of a documentary, with interviews from experts in the field of extraterrestrials and digital effects. So the first film, which is a prologue, is titled Abduction, Adduction, Frame Narrative. So the basis of this one is, in 2021, an anonymous Redditor claimed to have bought a mysterious pair of video cassettes from a flea market, the tape supposedly containing video evidence of an alien encounter. Now, mind you all, with this film being titled VHS, and it goes along with all the other entries in the franchise, it feels like, it definitely does feel like a VHS kind of thing. Especially when each segment goes to the next one, it's like taking a tape out and everything's all staticky, and you put the next one in, that kind of thing. So it gives that retro feel of VHS, putting a VHS tape in and stuff. So I like that about these films. That's a pretty good transition when it comes to doing something anthology or something with different segments that move on from one thing to another. And I notice a lot of YouTubers do use that effect as well, where it's the VHS effect. You got the time and date stamp on there, and then you got the little the digital snow and shit like that to transition from one scene to another. So I kind of like that. That is pretty cool. So yeah, this has something to do with finding tapes, and the tapes are shown in pictures. Each tape that is labeled Proof 1 and Proof 2 respectively. Jay Cheel received an anonymous email with the footage from the tapes in digitalized form. The footage shows the story of the Farrington House, a site that is the topic of a urban legend in Canada. In the 2000s, paranormal group collected anecdotal anecdotes, evidence from a grave form. One of the experts, Mitch Horowitz, says that if we do not find proof of extraterrestrial life, that everything we thought we knew would come into question. So the segment split up in between each different story segment, and it tells a tale in a documentary way. So then we go into the first VHS tape story, which is titled Stork. And I didn't know it was titled Stork. You don't know this shit until you look it up. So it's titled Stork. Because when I watched this segment, and I thought it was about zombies. I thought it was about cultists turned into zombies, that kind of thing. So you're following, okay, there's a string of baby disappearances that you learn. There's a police, a group of police officers. It's a unit, and they're dubbed Warden. They gather late night after having found out the location of the missing babies. And as someone followed the guy that took one, so they bring in their newest member, who is tasked to film basically the entire raid, as they go in. He's just the backup right there. He doesn't have any guns. He's carrying ammo for the police officers. He's got the camera, and they go into this house, and a whole lot of fucked up shit happens. They are attacked left and right by, people who were basically undead in a sense. They're zombified. It's like watching a zombie movie. That's how I felt. I felt like this segment was basically like a short zombie film. Because there's a whole lot of zombie movies out there. I think the zombie genre is well overdone. It's well overdone. It's too overrated. That's what I'm trying to say. The whole zombie genre is too overrated. There's too many of them. Just like with vampire movies, just like with paranormal movies. But they're still going to happen every so often. Horror. It tries to evolve, but it's like you can't evolve from something new. You've pretty much done everything that you can, with horror. You just make horror movies. Use something new. That kind of thing. But with these zombies, it's very interesting because they kill a couple of them, and they notice that they wear these patches over their foreheads, and they peeled one back, and it turned out there was a hole in their head, and they looked in the hole, and it seems like something suck their brains out because it's very hollow. All you see is veins inside their heads. So something sucks out their brains. So then they find the source of where this thing is that's been taking the babies and feeding them and such. And it turns out to be this giant alien-like stork that resides in the attic of this house. And they eventually do kill it off. So there is a good ending to that short segment right there. Because usually with all these segments, everybody dies. There's never a survivor. There's barely any survivors with these type of movies, but everybody survived in this segment. So there was definitely a pretty decent, good ending to this whole thing that has happened. So yeah, that's Stork, and then like I said, you go into the next the transition of the next segment for the documentary style, and then you go into another story, which is called Dream Girl. Now this one, I found it to be a little bit offbeat from the overall tone of VHS, but each story or each movie has a different undertone to it when it comes to presenting certain short stories. Like this one feels like a very popsy horror film. Like I almost kind of fell out of it with this one. It's about this Mumbai native paparazzi. And then this whole one, there's a little bit of English in it, but the rest of it is like, it's all translated into text, so you would have to read some captioning for that. So there's a couple of paparazzis, these two guys, they're giving a tip about footage about the latest Bollywood sensation, Tara, who is rehearsing for a music video or a film or something. And one of the paparazzi resents celebrities as he had dreamed of being famous himself, implying that him becoming a paparazzi hound is a way of getting closer. They sneak into the filming session of this person's next movie, which ends abruptly when the manager gets infuriated by the amount of takes that the director is using and demands Tara to go on break. After leaving the set, the paparazzi guy, he calls himself Arnab, or Arnabe. It's A-R-N-A-B. You all figure that out. So he sneaks into her trailer and hides in a closet. But after a while, he accidentally reveals himself to her. While he's hiding in the closet, he discovers something in a bowl that belongs to her, which is a face, a human face. And then after he comes out, he apologizes. He tries to leave, but then he starts feeling sympathetic for her a little bit. He decides to be empathetic toward her and tell her that she doesn't need to be pushed around anymore by any managers and stuff like that. So after talking to her, she feels emboldened by his words, right? So she reveals that she is a robot / AI machine and decides to rip her face off. So this one is not alien based or zombie based. It turns out to be like some kind of robot. And she ends up going on a killing spree, saying that she's free, she's no longer a slave to the system and stuff like that. Really scares the hell out of these two guys that are paparazzi, chasing them throughout this whole theater, killing everybody in sight. And like I said, everybody dies. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, they all die in very grotesque and horrific ways. So this was a very tongue-in-cheek, interesting entry in this movie. But it was definitely something now. Now, before I continue, a lot of these movies, when it comes to the gore fests, I can't really remember fully how gory the other entries were, but I could tell you this one is pretty gory in a sense. Probably, as somebody said, that it was probably like the goriest one of all. And now, like, you know, everybody's talking about seeing this movie Terrifier 3, and they're all like, oh, people are vomiting in theaters watching this film. It's like, well, movies have been gory for so many years. Get over it. But this one here is pretty gory. This movie is. So then we go into the next segment, Live and Let Die. Live and Let Dive. I mean, dive as in dive in the pool. This one was kind of a yawner for me. I will say this one's a very yawner, because this one follows a group of people who are taking their best friend out, who's celebrating his 30th birthday with his wife, and they're going out skydiving. And everything's filmed in this small-ass plane that's holding 8 people in the pilot, but then the pilot takes notice to this UFO that pops up in the skies, and then this alien comes out from the spaceship, you know, miles away, and then hops on his plane and takes it down, and well, everybody just ends up jumping out and parachuting down to their death, basically, with only maybe about a handful of the crew members survives it. But then they're on a race for their life to outrun this alien being that is actually chasing them down. So one of the guys, I think his name is Zach. So after they're on the ground, he ends up finding his way out of the maze as he's watching his friends being, the life sucked out of them and torn apart. So he manages to get to a road, and he pulls some random guy over who is driving his truck, and he tries to reason with him, tell him that there's something out there trying to get him. You got to go. So the farmer's threatening him with a shotgun to get out of the truck, but the alien shows up and kills the farmer instead. So when Zach goes to take off in the truck, there's an alien blast. Another alien blast of light from its head. Okay, I'm jumping a little bit. Okay. So as Zach is driving or trying to drive away in this guy's truck, the truck is suddenly sucked into the air along with him. The truck is entering the UFO ship as the aliens attack Zach, and the tape ends abruptly, leaving his fate unknown. So that one, it's an alien film. That's a short alien film. That one is. It's almost like it's starting to come to life in a sense. Like, you already got this documentary style segment that's split up talking about alien beings and such. But then you got this one segment where it's like, okay, aliens are invading, it's very subtle. Aliens do kill, and they're perceived in a different matter, mixture of the big head with the green eye, big black eyes and shit. But they're crawling around like wild animals, everything's CG. So then I already talked about Fur Babies with Justin Long. Like I said, that's the one with the woman who runs a daycare, and she's also a taxidermist, and it's about an animals rights activist group. Now, this is where I find it funny. Animal rights activist group. Now, I understand there's people out there that care about animals, and they really care about animals. They don't want to see anything terrible happen to animals. They don't want to see people butchering and killing innocent animals and such. They care about, animal rights. That's cool and all. But when you got groups that are really out there that'll really, they'll kill you if you slaughter a cow or something, those kind of groups, for them to meet their fate in this film it's almost satisfying. I want to say that even though this is probably the most disturbing entry in the movie, it's probably the most satisfying, especially if you're somebody who's like, yeah, fuck those animal rights activists. They're a bunch of big bitches on the internet, that kind of thing. So the group sends a couple of them to investigate her house. And of course, they're going through the whole tour with the woman, and she already knows she's being filmed and such. So she takes them down to the basement, shows off the projects that she's working on, which is, a couple guys in the cages, that she's transforming into animals. And then they manage to knock him out. It's this woman and some other guy, some other brute-looking guy, knocks him out. And then they end up on these gurneys, the operating tables, and then the other people show up, looking for them. They're coming in. They're planning on killing her and taking, tearing down the house and all. But that gets foiled anyway, because once they make it down to the basement, then she reveals a couple projects that she worked on where a couple humans that she did work on are in like full transition. They look like big mutant dogs, and they just start tearing up these people apart, limb from limb. And it is pretty gory and as such. You do see a good bit of it. Some of it's also led to imagination. But that one, I will say, it's a very satisfying entry if you're into that kind of stuff. And then we got number 4, which is the last main segment of this movie. It's called Stowaway. And I almost forgot what this one was about, and I only watched it recently. Okay, so this is about another UFO thing. This one is very interesting to me. I kind of like this one. This one seems a little bit more down to earth in a sense, but it's also, it's a load of BS in the sense. Where you got this woman, Haley, who's a woman who is implied that to have left her husband and child behind, is documenting her finds of possible extraterrestrial encounters in the Mojave Desert. She talks to people who say they saw lights at night. So one time at night, she witnesses the lights fall from the sky. She goes to investigate, only to find a spaceship. She enters and examines the interior when she cuts herself these small little nanites. And nanites are, little regenerative beings. You see them in sci-fi and horror movies. Like, look at Jason X. When Jason's all shot to pieces and you got the nanite system, the nanites, they start to form limbs on his body, bringing him back to life and such. Look at movies like The Avengers Endgame, where Tony Stark has his suit that's all nanotechnology. He don't have to worry about waiting for pieces to fly on his body. Everything is nanites. So it builds a nanite suit over him to protect him and shit. So she cuts herself on the wall. These nanites come out and they heal her. Though she quickly learns that it causes minor mutations also due to the ship keeping other animals in stasis and copying their DNA. After hiding from an alien, she realizes that she has no escape. The nanites appear again to help her injuries, and the spaceship accelerates to light speed, throwing her around and injuring her again. Healed once more by the nanomachines, Haley begins to suffer more and more mutations over her body as a result of the cycles of injury and repair, which is interesting. So she doesn't have any really run-ins with an alien, but with what is going on with this technology and all, and what it's doing to her body, it's like, yeah, it is very interesting and disturbing in the end with how that all plays out for her. So that is all the segments for the movie VHS Beyond. Now, even though it just came out on Shudder, I want to say, how long ago did it come out? It just came out October 4th. Okay, it was October 4th. This movie has a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.9 out of 10 with an average rating. The website's consensus reads that the VHS series shows no signs of the tape wearing out, with this terrifying entry boasting an assortment of shorts that'll sate the appetite of horror and sci-fi affectionists alike. Ryan Scott of iFilm, or Film, I guess I've never heard of it. It's like Slash Film, gave the movie a 9 out of 10 rating, writing pound for pound, segment for segment, death for death. This is everything that we could possibly want from a horror anthology. The Fort Worth Report describes the series as out-of-this-world fun, noting that each of the 6 short films is exceptional. And the AV Club remarked that while other VHS installments have sometimes been scattershot, united by format and time period more than anything else, VHS Beyond holds together almost perfectly as thematic exploration of the things lurking just beyond our understanding. And that is a pretty good statement right there, I will say. And then you got The negatives. Okay, let's look over the negative receptions. Screen Rant noted that the series has found quite a bit of success, and it's partly thanks to the huge number of talented actors who contributed to this part, such as Justin Long and sense. Brian Tellerichio of RogerEbert.com. Yep, here we go. Siskel and Ebert, they're famous for their movie reviews and critique when it came to their the TV show and such back in the 90s, or 80s and 90s. But they were always very salty when it came to movies. You know, it's like they were very picky, very particular. Now, this person here gave the film a neutral rating, awarding it 2.5 out of 4 stars. Siskel and Ebert have never been fans of horror movies. They never been big fans of horror movies at all. You know, they could definitely care less about it. But like I said, you know, even though these are the consensus of different review sites, you always can go into it, you know, with a grain of salt. Don't go into them with heavy expectations, and you'll definitely enjoy them. And I will say, like, even though there may have been 1 or 2 segments in this film that I found kind of either tongue-in-cheek or a bit of a yawner, but I will say it's definitely a bit of a step up, and it's very interesting that it took a newly direction for the franchise. Because in a sense, when you do so many of these films, they start to kind of stale out in a sense. They kind of stale out a little bit, but they always find that in the end, you know, they still try to come around and regain themselves naturally. And that's what this movie does. Like I said, there's been 6 other films. This is the 7th one. I didn't even know about the side films, to be honest. I'm definitely going to check those out. That's going to be an interesting take for me right there. But if you are into anthology horror films, if you're into a little bit of sci-fi mixed with horror, you probably will like this movie. It's definitely worth watching at least once, maybe twice. If you're a big fan of anthology horrors, this will probably be your next best friend. I will say that. It is very, very gory. It's plenty gory. Close to 2 hours of content. You definitely will fall in love with this one. I want to give VHS Beyond an 8 out of 10. Now, why I give it an 8 out of 10 myself, even though I do like some anthology horror films, and this one was pretty fun, even though there's maybe a couple things here or there that kind of didn't really tickle my fancy a little bit. But I'm being honest with you guys. That's my honest rating personally, an 8 out of 10. The next person may give it a 9. Next person may give it a 10. Whatever it is, my opinion-wise, I give my rating close to a perfect 10 just about for a movie like this. Then there's people who may not be fans of these kind of movies. They may not like anthology horror movies, and that is fine. That's okay. That is your review. That is your opinion. I'm giving my honest opinion and a view that maybe if you want to check it out after watching today's episode, hey, you may not be disappointed. And that does it for today's episode of Cinemacast, guys. Thank you for joining me today. Today's feature was VHS Beyond. If you guys liked this film, what was your favorite part of the film? Did you enjoy it? Let us know down in the comments section below. Also, take note to our other featurettes right here on the playlist on the channel. We do have other episodes of Cinemacast you guys can check out if you missed those. We got season 1 and season 2 of them. Pretty soon I'm going to be doing, I got a whole lot more movies coming out here. I even got episodes that are backlogged from just 3-4 months ago that I still have yet to upload it, but you guys will definitely see those. So if you see anything that's different in the upper left, you know, like links and stuff like that, that's why. So there are older episodes that I still got to upload. It's been very hectic for me. So I do want to thank you guys for definitely taking a liking to this podcast, Cinemacast. I know everybody likes, you know, going and hitting up the movie reviews, so I try to do my best to entertain you guys, feed you guys very much, you know, pretty good. So, without further ado, guys, I'm going to go ahead and head on out of here. Thank you for joining me today for today's feature of VHS Beyond. And until next time, I'll catch you right back here at the cinema.